Welcome to another edition of the Official Jets podcast, powered by Amazon Web Services. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, here in the BetMGM studios. This week, we got Braden Mann on the pod. Make sure to rate us, subscribe to us wherever you may find your podcast, NewYorkJets.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play. Bart Scott comes back for our Victorinox Swiss Army Knife Player of the Game segment.
You rattled those names off rather quickly.
Yeah, I tried to do it like a commercial, where it's like, terms and conditions do apply, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about regarding commercials, yeah.
Yeah, I have a newfound respect for people that lead an auction. What are they called? Auctioneers?
Auctioneers. I have a great respect for Braden Mann because he's not just a punter, he is a football player. Every time we see him out there on Sunday afternoon, you never know who he's going to pop next. Much respect.
Braden Mann joins the pod later in the show. He talked about what EA mentioned, his tackling in the NFL. I believe he now has 2 tackles on the year, had one against the Miami Dolphins. Talked some Texas football, both high school and college. And he's got a baby face, so we have to make sure to bring that up, EA.
Yeah, but he plays a grown man's game. And a lot of kickers, they're going to shy away from contact. And I totally get it, especially at this point in my life. But Braden Mann, he is looking for it. So,
yeah.
That's the mentality of, hey, he's going back to his linebacker days. And he's not the most imposing dude, but he gets after it. And the kid grew up in Texas. That's part of your blood. The physicality of the game and the mindset. So, interesting, a really nice kid, learning the ropes in the National Football League. So far, as the 2020 Jets draft class, you'd have to say it's incomplete at this point because we're 6 games into these guys' careers. But I think Mann's done a lot of good things here early in his professional career.
And Braden Mann talked about the intricacies of punting. I thought that was pretty interesting. So let's hear from the Jets rookie, Braden Mann. Braden, thanks a lot for joining us here on the Official Jets podcast. Just first things first, what is life as a rookie like in the NFL, especially in a COVID world where you're typically not interacting with your teammates as much as you usually would?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of I don't really know anything else right now, so I imagine being a rookie alone is hectic as it is. But, with COVID, I'm sure it's a little different, but I really just don't know any other way right now. So maybe next year it'll be a little bit more calmed down with everything not going on, hopefully. So, yeah, it's definitely a little bit hectic, but I'm loving it.
Being a young man who grew up in Texas, what do you think about the Northeast and in New Jersey? And have you had the opportunity to get into New York City at all?
I love the area up here. I mean, it's awesome. It's definitely a bit of a culture shock for me because I grew up in Houston and went to college at Texas A&M. So I haven't really left that 100-mile radius in my life. So it is definitely awesome up here, though. I'm loving it. I did get to go to Central Park one day, which was awesome. It was really cool. It was kind of it was nothing like I ever imagined. It was huge. I didn't really think everything there was that big. So,
did you walk Central Park or did you run it?
I definitely walked that. That was on our off day. I wasn't going to run Central Park that day. Maybe another day I'll go try it.
What were your impressions of New York before you got here? Like, what did you think of the area, and what did you know about the area, whether it was through movies, pop culture, or just through friends that have traveled?
I don't really have a whole lot of friends that have traveled to New York. I've always wanted to. So, it was really cool when I got the call, and I was like, man, that's one of the places I've never been. So I really wanted to come up here. And, I haven't really been in New York City itself a whole lot. I've kind of been in this little area of New Jersey. But New York was definitely everything that I imagined it was. I basically just seen movies, and that's what I've gotten out of it. So, it's definitely super cool to kind of see it all. All the stories you hear about New York and just the culture and the amount of people in it is insane. So.
You said you grew up in the Houston area. How would you describe the culture in Texas? Because us in the Northeast, we consistently hear people say everything's bigger in Texas.
It is for the most part. I think everything is more crowded here for sure. Everything's just more like spacious there. So everything is bigger in Texas, but it's also got a lot more room in it. So there's just a lot more of a space. So I've never been kind of this many people crammed into one area in my life.
Braden, what's something that you think the Northeast should adopt from either the South in general or specifically Texas?
Texas.
I like my Texas.
Greens.
I'm sorry.
I said Texas is the Southwest.
Yeah, all right.
I think the barbecue for sure. I haven't really had a whole lot of barbecue up here, and I'm kind of missing it. And I think that's definitely one of the things that they could use a little bit up here for sure. I'm missing the Tex-Mex, the barbecue, all the food.
What can you say? How would you describe the college rivalries there in Texas? Because you went to A&M, of course. Was there any thought to going to UT, or that's not allowed in the Mann household? Because I know college rivalries are real in Texas.
Yeah, well, the first probably 12 or 14 years of my life, A&M wasn't allowed in the Mann household because we were a big Iowa State family. And the Big 12 was kind of a rivalry there. So they didn't, my family was definitely not A&M people, but my sister ended up going to A&M. And so I took a few visits, loved the place. And now we're a big Aggie family, and UT is still not allowed. But A&M wasn't at one point. Now we are.
So the 12th man, how would you describe what that was like playing there? And we always see those shots of everybody lined up in uniform. Can you describe that atmosphere, that environment you played in collegiately?
It is pretty unreal. There's not a whole lot like the entire 12th man swaying, seeing the student section. That was one of the best things in football, I think, is every fourth quarter we had the sway where you see everybody lined up and swaying back and forth. And to look from our sidelines into the student section, see all that, it was one of the coolest environments I've ever been in. I don't think there's another stadium in college football like it.
Braden, I'm curious about high school football in Texas. It's super competitive from everything that I've read, everything I've seen. And obviously there's TV shows and movies like Friday Night Lights. But, I was just watching something talking about Kyler Murray in Texas and going to Allen. And now he's playing there as we record this podcast episode. He's playing back in Texas tonight as the Cardinals take on the Dallas Cowboys. But what is high school football like in Texas? And can you give us a glimpse of how competitive that is?
That is also something that's pretty unmatched around the country, I think. My district alone, for example, we had at the time 10 6A high schools in one district. And I graduated with 875 people. So that many people in one district gets pretty competitive, especially when you have just kind of the culture of Texas football down there. So I don't know, in the stadium that we played at, I think our home stadium seated 12, 15,000. So I think that got me a little bit ready for college football. It wasn't like the 800 you see some other places. So it was pretty crazy. Some people would think that it was like a smaller like college stadium. So I think it was awesome. There's definitely nothing like high school football in Texas. And I don't think I really realized that until I left.
Was your first love soccer, though, because you were an accomplished player growing up? And what made you make the move towards football? And to that extent, also, as a follow-up, do you still follow soccer? Are you an avid watcher of the World Cup or maybe the Premier League?
Or FIFA player?
No, I was never really good at FIFA. I got worked a couple of times against my roommates, so I kind of stayed away from FIFA. But no, my first love was always football, and I did play soccer my entire life. I played when I was like 4 years old. So, but my first love when I started playing was definitely football, and that's what I always wanted to do in college. That's what I always wanted to continue on doing. I do miss soccer a little bit and miss playing goalie in there, and
you play ball
in the sport where I now use my feet. So
you play ball?
I did, yeah. I don't know why, but I always like the positions where you don't do anything everybody else does. Like I use my feet now and I use my hands there. So I don't know. I kind of like to mix it up.
But you are a football player, and we know we're definitely going to talk about you mixing it up. But scouting report, you as a high school linebacker, but what was Braden Mann like?
Well, I kind of just played my freshman year. I never played on varsity or anything as much as I really wanted to. I like to think that I laid the wood a little bit, but I was never like the biggest or the most physical specimen out there. So I kind of had to make up for it a little bit, just trying to be a little smarter. But yeah, I don't think I was ever, I don't know. Looking back at my body size now, my body type now, I'm kind of glad I strayed away from linebacker because I wouldn't have been able to really do that in college. You see all these guys around me. So I'm glad I made the transition, but it was a lot of fun while I
How much did you weigh at the freshman year of high school?
Freshman year of high school, I probably weighed about 180-ish.
Okay, that's pretty
Somewhere around
big.
there.
You're a freshman?
Yeah, not a bad
Probably
size
not in
freshman,
Texas,
but
though,
definitely
right?
wasn't the biggest. I'm sorry.
I said probably not that big in Texas, though.
No, definitely not. That's why I'm saying I was definitely one of the smaller linebackers at our high school.
Did you grow up watching football and liking linebacker, and that's why you wanted to play it? And if that's the case, then were there any linebackers that you particularly liked in the NFL?
Definitely. I grew up always liking I don't know, something about defense. It wasn't necessarily linebacker because that's where I kind of best fit. I was never really the fastest guy either, so I didn't really have any of the one characteristics that you needed. But I felt like linebacker is probably where I belong the most. And I don't know, there wasn't really. I never watched a whole lot of NFL football growing up. I'm not gonna lie, so I didn't really have any NFL guys that I watched all the time. I always just watched college football and always turn on it like seriously any game I could find. And just watch their defense. And there's something I always liked about, just getting to lay people out all the time or, make tackles. And that's something I just used to love to do.
I know you don't want to make tackles as a punter, but you've already made a couple here in the National Football League. What's going through your mind when you see a guy in the open field like a Deontay Spencer or Grant in Miami? And then after you actually take down that player, do you ever have a little trash talk?
No, I've never trash talked on a punt return because usually it's probably a pretty good punt return. So I don't feel like it's really my place to talk trash that much. But I don't know, there's not really a whole lot going through my mind. It's kind of just I just let everything go and just try to I use the sideline a lot because I've always heard that the sidelines never miss a tackle in its life. So I always try to force them to the sidelines and just trying to keep them in that little space and then just put my head in there or maybe a shoulder from now on, just not my head.
But do you like the contact? You see a lot of kickers sometimes, they get in the general vicinity, but it doesn't look like they want any part of it. You, on the other hand, it's almost like that freshman from high school is taking over and it's form tackle time.
Definitely, yeah. I think I don't know. I get pretty excited, like a split second before I make the tackle, because it kind of lets me live out my dreams that were once long ago of playing linebacker. So for that split second, I actually get to live out that dream playing linebacker a little bit, and then I kind of go back to punting. So like you said, I never really want to make a tackle per se, but when I get to, then it is a little bit of fun just to really get on there and kind of interact with some of those guys who are way faster and stronger and taller than me. So,
Braden, I feel like a lot of people that think about punting but don't really know a whole lot about special teams think it's see ball, kick ball as far as you can, as hard as you can. But can you take us into the intricacies of different punts and what different punters are coached to do? Not necessarily you in particular, but what are the different kicks that you work on and how long does that take to perfect? And what's a punting strategy like entering a Sunday game plan?
I think the transition from college to the NFL was huge. Honestly, there wasn't like a whole lot to know in college rather than, just when you get to a shorter field, try and kick it higher, not as far. And then when you're backed up, just try to hit the farthest spiral you can. The NFL, obviously, all these returners are super dangerous and they know it and they know how fast they are. And so you can't give them too much space. So I think just kind of a hang time to distance ratio has got to be a little bit better in the NFL. And then there's just a lot of scheme that you don't really see in college a whole lot. For instance, you don't have any spread punt in the NFL. It's not allowed. So you got to do a lot of pro punt. And so your only two cover guys for a little bit are the gunners. So you got to work with them as much as you can. But yeah, we have a few different punts, trying to mix it up with the returners. And hopefully I'm trying to, mask it to where they don't really know which one I'm doing. Because if you can get them a little bit uncomfortable, that's a win. And to get our gunners on the same page is definitely a major key for that. So I just think there's some things that people that don't necessarily watch the games really know. They just think we are trying to boot it, like you said. But there are things that are running through our head that you don't really hear or see on TV.
How about the difference in the ball, though? You're using a different ball than you did in college.
I like it a lot more, actually. The NFL balls are a lot of fun to kick. I know we've got to use our K balls, which are relatively new when we kick them. But yeah, they're a little bit fatter, just a little bit kind of shorter, more compact. And the leather is fantastic. So we actually, I love to kick the NFL ball. It's my favorite football to kick that I've kicked through high school, college, whatever I've tried. That's my favorite one.
And do you have a favorite stadium that you've kicked in yet? I know it's only been 6 games now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. I usually try to base these stadiums off of fans and like kind of the atmosphere, So I'm sure MetLife would be rocking if we had fans and stuff like that. So it's weird getting a feel for it right now. But Miami was a pretty cool stadium too. That's just a little bit different with the kind of roof coming on both sides, and that was a pretty cool one as well.
Can you believe it already? You're 6 games into your NFL career, and what can you say about what do you like that you've been doing, and what are some things that you continue to work on with Brant Boyer?
Yeah, I can't believe I'm 6 weeks in already. It's kind of gone by really fast, and I didn't really think it'd come this fast. So it's been kind of a wild ride for the first 6 games, and there's a lot of things that I can definitely clean up. I think one thing is just getting my hang time and direction up because even if you hit a long ball or a short ball, if you're hang time and you have good direction, outside the hash or outside the numbers, then your gunners can cover it and it'll be a good punt, But those are definitely things I can work on, is just trying to help my gunners out as much as I can with hang time and let them get down there and just make it easier on them, because it's not easy on them when you punt a low far one, because they got to cover a lot more ground, and those returners are just when they get open and when they get in open space, it's hard to cover them in general.
Do you take pride in holding?
I'm sorry?
You take pride in holding as well. That goes under the radar a little bit. And me, I'd probably be like the character in Snoopy. I'd probably be letting my hand go off of that ball.
Yeah, I definitely take pride in holding. I think it's something that's pretty underrated. People don't really think about it until you mess up, So it's one of those things where nobody's really going to notice if it's good or bad until you mess up. So hopefully, if you have a good enough holding career, a couple games, like nobody will notice. But I definitely take a lot of pride in it, and just trying to help Sam out as much as I can.
This is kind of a 2-part question, unrelated to each other. In terms of holding, when did you first start holding, and how much have you grown in that aspect, and what goes into different holds? Because Brant Boyer has always said it really depends on the kicker. And then the other part of this is, you mentioned the gunners on punt coverage. Well, how difficult is it to try to develop a chemistry with your gunners when you're dealing with a lot of injuries throughout the defense or the offense, depending on who the gunners are, because those guys are consistently changing. At least they have been in the first couple weeks here in the season.
To your first part of that, the holding is working just with one kicker is definitely makes it a little bit easier. But once you kind of get it down, it's a little, you can go back and forth pretty easily between 2 kickers, because I know in camp we had Brett and we had Sam, and once I got a few with each of them, I kind of knew what I had to do for those. But I started holding my freshman year of college because I just got recently moved from kicking field goals in high school to punting, and so that was something that I never really did in high school because I didn't have to. So I kind of took all the snaps on the sidelines before the field goal team went out. So that got me a lot of practice, because I was there and I wasn't going to have our punter just go take 1,000 snaps from our snapper. So that got me a lot of practice on the sidelines. I think that's what kind of helped me a little bit and grow before I actually had to do it in the game. And then, the gunners, it's mostly just during the week. It's week to week. We don't really know what's going to happen in the previous game or who's going to be out. So just working throughout the week and knowing who your gunners are and just communicating with them throughout the week, and just take it, one day at a time, and hopefully you develop good chemistry with them. I know I did this week, and we were on the same page throughout the week, and just we're trying to get good chemistry between us on the fly, because injuries happen all the time, unfortunately, and it's just something you kind of got to roll with.
How are you getting along with your fellow 2020 NFL draft class? I know you had the leg up, per se, on a couple Florida Gators as A&M got past them here early in the college football season.
Yeah, it was definitely I don't talk trash a lot, but I was definitely talking trash after that. I tried not to talk too much beforehand, because Florida's a good team, A&M's a good team, but afterwards I just kind of let it loose, because nothing's quite like the feeling of the scoreboard after the game. So there was definitely some hurt feelings here or there, but me being the only Aggie on the team, I had to let my opinion known.
All right, I like that. I got one more question for you, unrelated to football. Braden, when people guess your age, what do they say? And before COVID, do you always get carded entering a bar? I feel like you're going to be carded for a long time.
Yeah, I definitely, people don't think, people think I look pretty young, and I've always been like that. Like my senior year of high school, I was always asked if I was like a sophomore or whatever. And in college, I was never, everyone thought I was a freshman my senior year. And it's just, I think the facial hair is a huge problem. Or the lack of. So I definitely need to start growing that out if I can. But yeah, usually people think I'm 2 or 3 years younger than I actually am. So 22, but some people think I look 19 still, unfortunately.
All right.
Hey, that's a good quality to have. You always want to look young, believe
Yeah,
me. And good luck with the facial hair.
Thank you. Hopefully the young thing sticks with me later on in life. So maybe that's maybe that's the upside to this.
Yeah, you're playing the long game here. It might bite you in high school and college, but then in your later years of life, it might come around to your advantage.
Exactly.
Braden, appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Braden.
As you just saw, EA and I had to play some Atlantic Health Jets Training Center roulette to get that Braden Mann interview done because we were both in the building, but not in the BetMGM studio.
No, Inside the Jets was being taped at that time, so I think Dan Graza and the Bart Scott were up here, and I was displaced actually inside the team meeting room, which happens to be at the auditorium at One Jets Drive, socially distant from the rest of the world because that's a big space and nobody was there other than me.
Did you sit in one of the comfy chairs?
No, I sat in a chair, one of the instructor chairs down below. So, no, it was not one of the comfortable chairs.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Inside the Jets with Bart Scott. Bart Scott also joined the pod, like I said earlier, for our weekly segment of our Victorinox Swiss Army Knife Player of the Game segment. So let's hear from the Mad Backer. All right, now it's time for our Victorinox Swiss Army Knife Player of the Game, or matchup to watch with Bart Scott. Bart, thanks a lot for joining us yet again. Jets-Bills in Week 7. Who's your matchup to watch or your player to watch?
Greens, he kicked us out of the studio. Do you see something wrong here?
Oh, yeah.
The studio, and Bart has taken over.
Yeah, I'm claustrophobic, man. I'm stuck in here, man. I've been here for 2 shows, man. I'm nervous, man. The walls are closing in on me. I need sunlight. But I tell you what, man, my player to watch is the same players to watch in the first matchup. It's always about Josh Allen, his ability to extend plays with his legs. He killed the Jets, not only just dropping back and throwing the ball, not even the off-schedule plays where he had to improvise, but the plan and design runs that he had as well. And that comes when you talk about Josh Allen, his ability to extend plays and make big plays on the field. You have to tie that directly to Stephon Diggs. So those are the players to watch. So I think they're one and the same. They're taking over the league. They're one of the most productive duels in the game right now, and they're really going to have to address that because if you start giving up big plays, and that's going to open up the running game for Singletary and for the young rookie, Zach Moss.
Zach Moss out of Utah.
Hey, you're rookie. Yeah, I don't really have to know your name when you're a rookie.
He is spoken like the true linebacker he was and still is, because that mentality never has left Bart Scott. I got to go to the other side of the ball. The Jets got to jumpstart this offense. So the offensive line dealing with some injuries right now, but hopefully they'll be able to provide some protection for whomever is playing quarterback for the Jets this week. Likely you would anticipate that Joe Flacco making his 3rd consecutive start under center. The Bills have had problems defensively here early in the 2020 season, whereas Buffalo in years past, they had ridden their success based on that defense, but they've given up a lot of yards and a lot of points. Let's see how the Jets can match up at the line of scrimmage, because you're going to need a balanced attack, because you got to get in third and manageables. Last week, Bart, the Jets just 2 of 17 on 3rd down.
Oh, I saw it. Trust me, I witnessed every single snap of that. I tell you what, Josh Norman hasn't made a big impact is that other lockdown corner opposite Darius White. Tre'Davious White. But I tell you what, when you think about, what you have to do is, pretty much, you think about the Buffalo Bills. They haven't been a team that's been super aggressive blitzing, but they're going to blitz the Jets because the Jets have struggled with interior blitzing and blitzing from the outside. So they're going to be able to have their hot routes together. They have to be able to have their plan because they're going to get it until they're able to really, stop it. You think about maybe maxing it up and getting 2-3-man routes and having 8-man protections or 7-man protections. That's something that you're going to have to consider because the Buffalo Bills, I know in their past they've been conservative, but against the Jets they feel emboldened because they feel like they like their matchups on the outside. Let's see if that can change. Hopefully, Derek Mims can get himself back together and Mekhi Becton can get that shoulder, that wing fixed.
We've talked in the past. You said, "Hey, Ed Oliver, explosive player for the Jets. I mean, for the Bills on the interior,
Yeah.
but he's undersized."
Mhm.
And you talked about after week one, maybe potentially you can put a double on him and run the football. Jerry Hughes is a very good player from the outside, but the Bills are not getting it from other places right now.
Well, you talk about a guy when you talk about an explosive guy, he's a one gap penetrator. So when you talk about one gap penetrators, think about the old Tommy Harrison and how successful he was, there in Chicago. That means he's going to shoot up the field. He's going to get in the gaps. When you do that, you use his aggression against him. You trap block him. You let him shoot the gap and you block him with the backside guard and you send the guard in which he's over and you send him up to the linebacker. And that's how you create seals and holes for your running backs to get through. And it can be set up so that way that makes him have to play the game more cautiously and make sure that he fires off. He puts hands on instead of just recklessly getting up in the gaps. But because he's so small, you want to try and get that movement and try and trap block maybe the defensive end or trap Hughes because he's not a big guy, but you can get him with counter action with pulling backs and also from tight ends that on the opposite side coming in as if you coming in to cut his legs out and he has to protect himself. And then when he starts protecting himself, that's when you send that same tight end. I would prefer Griffin. You get him to the second level because he fakes the cut as he tries to avoid you. And then he gets out into the alley and you can have a big explosive plays. Everything has to mirror up because this is a smart defensive coaching staff. They run that system to perfection. So you have to use their eyes and their teaching against them.
I'm going to go with the Jets receiving core as my matchup to watch. And kind of like what Bart said, though, playing off of that, when you have Trey White on one side and then Josh Norman on the other, and the Bills feel like they can trust those guys and they start sending more blitzes, that leaves one-on-one matchups for guys like Brashad Perriman, Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder's only had one game in which he's not gone over 100 yards. So if the Jets get healthier on the outside with Brashad Perriman, we'll see what the status is of Denzel Mims. Maybe those guys can take advantage on the outside. But Bart, I want to wrap things up with this. What did you mean exactly for people that don't know when you say everything needs to mirror up on the defense? What exactly did you mean by that?
I mean, every run that you have in your playbook should have equally similar pass off of it. That way they can't hone in on you. They can't hone in on, okay, when P Ryan is in, then it's a run. When Gore's in, it's a pass. You have to make sure it mirrors up. The personnel mirrors up. You have to make sure that the same looks that you have, going one way, you can flip it. And if you flip it to the other side, it looks totally different to that side of the ball because they haven't seen it from that perspective. So you want to make sure that you mirror your looks up. That way you can have success in the play action game because that run looks just like that pass. When that run looks just like that pass, so then the linebackers have to respect the running backs. And that's when you create that separation in the middle. You allow your receivers to have open space to work because you think about the lack of linebacker depth creates pockets in which receivers can get the defenders on their back and be able to shield them and be able to get some of those 10 to 15 digs, slants, and opportunities to get that yak after they catch the ball.
It all starts with the line of scrimmage, and Bart is right. Anticipate the Buffalo Bills, who predominantly are known as a zone team, to play a lot of man and for each of the Jets' opponents until they start beating them down the field of crowding that box.
That was the Victorinox Swiss Army Knife Player of the Game, and that was another edition of the Official Jets podcast powered by AWS. Thanks to Braden Mann, and thank you, Bart Scott.
I have no life.